And the scotch, son. Try not to spill it this time." The voice, a rich baritone soaked in entitlement, sliced through the atrium's polite murmur. Marcus Rivington III, silver-haired and Savannah predator lean in his bespoke tuxedo, didn't even look at the young man. He'd simply thrust his empty glass backward, a king expecting a servant. Every head at the gala, the judges, the partners, the philanthropists, turned. They saw Rivington, a lion of the city bar, and they saw the target of his command, a slender black kid in a sharp, narrow-lapel suit who looked about 17. He was just standing there, motionless. The air in the Crystal Athenaeum wasn't just air. It was a curated atmosphere. It smelled of expensive perfume, old money, and the faint, ozonic chill of industrial-grade air conditioning battling the body heat of the city's legal elite. Two-story columns of white marble held up a glass ceiling that revealed a sharp, indifferent spray of city stars. Noah Ellison held his own empty glass, water, no ice, and watched the scene. He was here to accept a minor pro bono award on behalf of his small firm, a footnote in the evening's program. Then came the voice. "And the scotch, son. Try not to spill it this time." Noah didn't move. He felt the sudden, focused weight of 100 gazes. He saw the assumptions settle on him like dust. He was the help. He was a waiter who had forgotten his uniform. He was, at best, someone's diversity hire paralegal, brought along like a prop. Marcus Rivington III turned, an indulgent smile on his face, ready to playfully chastise the slow service. The smile faltered when he saw Noah's suit. It was better tailored than his own junior associates. He recalibrated. "Ah," Rivington said, his voice still loud enough to carry. "Not on the staff, then. My apologies." He looked Noah up and down, a butcher appraising meat. "A guest." "Yes," Noah said. His voice was quiet, calm, and held a clarity that seemed to vibrate. "Splendid." Rivington's smile returned, wider this time. This was a new sport. "And whose protégé are you? Let me guess." He tapped a finger to his temple. "The public defender's table? They always bring one. Good for them. Outreach is so important." A few people nearby tittered, a nervous, appreciative sound. At the head table, Judge Eleanor Vance watched the exchange. She was a woman of 60, with a sharp jaw and an iron reputation. She'd clawed her way to the appellate bench and was now the host of this, the Bar Association's annual legal aid fundraiser. She recognized Rivington's casual cruelty. She also saw the young man, Noah. She'd noticed him earlier, a flicker of anomaly in the sea of gray hair and power suits. He looks like a high schooler at his first prom, she'd thought, feeling a brief, maternal pang of pity. He's completely out of his depth. Now, her pity curdled with annoyance. The boy was just standing there, frozen. Rivington was a shark, and this was blood in the water. The boy's silence was turning an awkward moment into a public humiliation. "Say something," she willed him. "Defend yourself. Don't just take it." Rivington, emboldened by the silence and the appreciative chuckle of a nearby billionaire, took it one step further. He reached out, a gesture of paternalistic mockery, and clapped Noah on the shoulder. "Well, good on you, son. It's important to see how the other half lives." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial stage whisper. "A little advice? Stick to the shrimp. They're passable." That was it. The touch. Noah's stillness had not been fear. It had been calculation. He had been counting. He'd been cataloging the witnesses. He'd been dissecting the precise anatomy of Rivington's arrogance. He took one small, deliberate step back, breaking the physical contact. The atrium's hum had died completely. There was only the distant clatter of a plate from the kitchens. "My name," Noah Ellison said, his voice no louder than before, but cutting through the silence like a scalpel. Is Noah Ellison. Rivington kept his smile, but his eyes narrowed. The name meant nothing to him. I am lead counsel for the plaintiffs in case 924 CV 1088, Mendez versus Stratus Development. The blood drained from Marcus Rivington's face. The smile didn't just fade, it collapsed. Mendez v. Stratus was his case. It was his billion-dollar baby, the rezoning of the entire South Market district. It was supposed to be a simple eviction, a rubber stamp. Noah's eyes, dark and impossibly old, locked on the famed lawyer. You're counsel for the defense. I recognized you from your photograph on the firm's website. A collective, silent gasp seemed to suck the air from the room. This wasn't a waiter. This wasn't a kid. This was the opposition. Noah looked past Rivington, his gaze sweeping over the shocked faces, and landed, with uncomfortable precision, on Judge Vance. The judge felt the look like a physical impact. And you, Mr. Rivington, Noah continued, his voice lethally polite, have just provided me with a fascinating and, I suspect, actionable example of your firm's corporate culture. Specifically, your habit of underestimating and attempting to humiliate those you perceive as beneath you. Rivington's face was now a mottled, furious red. That is an outrageous allegation. Is it? Noah's tone was genuinely curious. You publicly mistook an opposing counsel for a servant. You offered unsolicited, condescending advice. You put your hands on me without consent. And you did it all in a room full of officers of the court. He gestured to the silent crowd. I count 12 judges, 34 senior partners, and at least 3 members of the press. How does that play in a deposition, I wonder? He didn't wait for an answer. He turned, not in a huff, but with the composed finality of a man who had finished his business. Judge Vance, he said, giving a respectful nod to the head table. Ladies and gentlemen. He walked away. He didn't run. He didn't look back. The crowd parted for him, a silent, sudden sea of tuxedos and silk. At the head table, Judge Vance picked up her wine glass. Her hand was shaking. She stared at the young man's back, the slender shoulders, the perfect suit. He's just a kid, she thought again, but the words had lost all meaning. The pity was gone, replaced by a cold, unfamiliar spike of fear. Not for the boy. For Marcus Rivington. The offices of Rivington, Sullivan, and Croft were on the 70th floor. They weren't just offices. They were a statement of dominance, a glass and steel throne room suspended over the city. Marcus Rivington's personal office was larger than Noah Ellison's entire apartment. Who the hell is Noah Ellison? Rivington roared. The sound bounced off the panoramic windows. Below, the city lights looked like a subordinate's spilled jewels. 3 junior associates, all male, all white, all in identical blue suits, stood before his massive oak desk. They looked terrified. We're pulling his file now, sir, said the bravest one, whose name Rivington neither knew nor cared to know. He's new, admitted to the bar 22 months ago. 22 months, Rivington spat the words. I've been trying cases longer than he's been breathing. He's a child. He's running a nuisance suit out of some closet downtown. The Southside Justice Collective, sir, the associate provided, wincing. A collective, Rivington laughed, a harsh, barking sound. He's a socialist, a child playing lawyer, and he tried to threaten me. He slammed his palm on the desk. The sheer violence of the act made the associates jump. I want him buried. Not just the case. Him. I want him disbarred. I want him sanctioned so hard he won't be able to file a parking ticket. Sir, the case. Mendez versus Stratus? The associate stammered. It's problematic. Problematic? Rivington's voice went dangerously low. It's a slum. We're offering those squatters a generous relocation fee to move out of a rat-infested fire trap. so we can build a state-of-the-art residential tower that will generate $2 billion in taxable revenue for this city. The plaintiffs are not squatters, sir. They're rent-controlled tenants. And Ellison, he's not arguing the relocation fee. He's arguing the zoning charter itself. Rivington went very still. Explain. He's filed an injunction based on a claim about the 1953 city zoning charter. He alleges the building, the El Dorado, has a historic landmark protection that was overlooked. Rivington stared. Overlooked for 70 years by every city planner, every lawyer, every developer. And this child found it? He shook his head. It doesn't exist. It's a bluff. A desperate, amateurish bluff. He embarrassed me. Now I'm going to end his career. He pointed a finger. File a motion, summary dismissal, and file a motion for sanctions against Ellison for frivolous litigation. I want them on Judge Vance's desk by 9 a.m. and get me everything on this Mendez family, everything. Where they work, where they shop, who their cousins are. I want to know what they breathe. The associates scurried out, leaving Rivington alone in the silence. He looked at his reflection in the dark glass. He saw the gala. The kid's eyes. I am lead counsel. He'd been made a fool of. It wasn't just business, it was personal. 53 blocks south and 70 floors down, the Southside Justice Collective smelled of old coffee, damp paper, and a radiator that was working too hard. There were no panoramic views. The windows were grime-caked and looked out onto a brick wall. Noah Ellison was standing in front of a wall-sized corkboard, which was covered in a chaotic spiderweb of documents, maps, and photographs. In the center was a yellowed, brittle-looking document under protective plastic. His boss and mentor, Ben Carter, leaned in the doorway. Ben was in his late 60s, with a rumpled suit and a face like a friendly bulldog. Heard you made a splash at the gala, kid. It wasn't my intention, Noah said, not turning around. Never is with you. Ben took a sip of lukewarm coffee from a chipped mug. Rivington is a monster, Noah. You poked him. He's not just going to fight the case, he's going to come after you. I know. And he's going to come after the clients. This made Noah turn. His face, which had been a mask of academic calm, tightened. The clients, the Mendez family, Rosa and Hector, and their 2 children. The dozens of other families in the El Dorado, the old, the poor, the undocumented. They're good people, Ben. I know. That's why they're good leverage. Ben walked over and stood beside Noah, looking at the board. You're sure about this? This document? It's real? It's real, Noah said. The conviction in his voice was absolute. I spent 6 months in the city archive sub-basement. They misfiled it. Not deliberately, just incompetence. Filed it under aqueduct maintenance for the 1953 water main project that ran under the same street. But it's the original charter addendum. It grants perpetual historic protection to the El Dorado as a Tier 1 example of post-war community housing. It can't be rezoned. It can't be demolished. Not without a unanimous vote from a committee that hasn't existed since 1974. Ben let out a low whistle. It's a nuke, a 70-year-old nuke. And Rivington has no idea, Noah said. He's been building his entire case on the 1982 City Rezoning Act, assuming it superseded everything. But it didn't. So what's his move? Now that he knows you're not a waiter? Noah pointed to a blank spot on the corkboard. He'll file for summary dismissal. He'll call this document a fraud. He'll say I'm a frivolous, inexperienced activist on a shakedown. And Judge Vance? She's establishment. She golfs with Rivington. I know. Noah looked at the board, his eyes tracing the web of connections. But Judge Vance also reveres the law, more than she likes Rivington. She just needs to be shown. You're putting a lot of faith in a piece of paper, kid. Rivington doesn't fight with paper. He fights with bulldozers. That's why he's going to lose, Noah said, turning back to the board. He thinks the fight is about power. He doesn't understand that the fight is about the truth. Ben sighed, shaking his head. He'd found Noah 3 years ago, a 20-year-old intern who'd already graduated from Yale Law. He was the brightest legal mind Ben had ever met, and the strangest. He was a quiet, unassuming prodigy who had turned down 6-figure offers from firms like Rivington's to come work in a closet for pennies. Rivington filed by 9 a.m., Ben said, holding up a fresh fax. Vance set the hearing for the motion to dismiss. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Noah nodded. I'll be ready. Noah. Ben stopped him. This isn't a library debate. This is a war. That man will try to destroy those families. He will try to destroy you. That look you gave him at the gala, that was a declaration. You ready for what comes next? Noah picked up his briefcase. It was old, leather, and scuffed. He's the one who isn't ready, Ben. He thinks I'm a kid. The next morning, Courtroom 3B was packed. It wasn't just the usual crowd of bored clerks and waiting lawyers. Marcus Rivington had brought his entire firm. A phalanx of dark-suited associates and partners filled the first 3 rows of the gallery. A silent, expensive show of force. They were there to watch a public execution. In the back row, huddled together, were Rosa and Hector Mendez. They looked terrified, like small birds trapped in a cathedral. Noah Ellison sat alone at the plaintiff's table. He'd placed his worn briefcase on the floor and had only a single leather-bound notebook and a pen before him. He looked, if anything, younger than he had at the gala. In the harsh fluorescent light of the courtroom, his tailored suit seemed out of place, a costume. Judge Eleanor Vance entered, and the room rose. Be seated. She settled into her high-backed chair, the bench looming over the room. She looked down at the 2 tables, at Rivington, in his element, radiating confidence and power, and at Noah Ellison, who was calmly writing a note in his book. He's just a boy, she thought again, a familiar refrain. The thought frustrated her. His stunt at the gala had been bold, but now, in the cold light of day, it felt like hubris. This is my courtroom, not a cocktail party. Let's see what you have, Mr. Ellison. Case 924 CV 1088, Mendez versus Stratus Development, she announced, her voice booming. We are here for the defense's motion for summary dismissal and for sanctions. Mr. Rivington. Rivington rose, a picture of polished, righteous anger. Thank you, Your Honor. This won't take long. He proceeded to deliver a masterclass in legal rhetoric. He was charming, deferential to the judge, and utterly scathing toward the plaintiff. Your Honor, we are here because of a fantasy, a frivolous, desperate, and frankly insulting claim by an opposing counsel who lacks the experience, the standing, and the basic decency to engage with the facts. He paced, his voice swelling. The facts are these. The El Dorado building is a fire trap. It is unsafe. My client, Stratus Development, has generously offered to relocate every tenant at their own expense to new, safe, modern housing. And what is their reward? An injunction. A lawsuit based on a ghost. A document that has allegedly been missing for 70 years. He laughed, and his associates laughed with him. Your Honor, this is the dictionary definition of a frivolous suit. It's a shakedown. Mr. Ellison, he said the name like it was something spoiled, is wasting this court's valuable time. He is holding a vital, job-creating project hostage. He is, in effect, committing extortion through this court. He returned to his table. We have provided 300 pages of zoning law, precedent, and city records. The 1982 Rezoning Act is the controlling authority. It is unambiguous. This case has no merit. We ask for immediate summary dismissal, with prejudice. And we ask the court to sanction Mr. Ellison personally for this flagrant abuse of the legal process. Thank you. He sat down. The silence in the room was heavy, triumphant. The associates behind him were grinning. Judge Vance looked at her papers, her face a mask. "Mr. Ellison," she said, her voice flat. "Your response." Noah stood. He didn't walk to the lectern. He just stood by his table. He looked small, insignificant. Rosa Mendez put her face in her hands. "Mr. Rivington," Noah began, his voice calm, "is an excellent lawyer. The 300-page brief his team prepared is thorough, well-researched, and impeccably argued. It is also, in its entirety, irrelevant." Rivington's head snapped up. One of his associates scoffed. "Oh, please." "Mr. Rivington has built a fortress of law," Noah continued, addressing Judge Vance exclusively. "On a foundation of sand. He rests his entire argument on the 1982 Rezoning Act." "As he should," Rivington boomed. "It is the law." "It is a law, Your Honor," Noah corrected softly. "But it is not the controlling law, not for the El Dorado building." Judge Vance leaned forward. "Then what is, Mr. Ellison? This ghost document you've supposedly found?" "It is not a ghost, Your Honor. It is Addendum 4.1b of the 1953 City Municipal Charter." "Which doesn't exist," Rivington shouted. "Mr. Rivington, you will be silent, or I will have you removed," Vance snapped. She looked at Noah. "Continue, Mr. Ellison. You have my full attention." "Thank you, Your Honor." Noah opened his notebook. "Mr. Rivington claims the document is a fraud. He claims it's been missing and is therefore suspect. He implies I somehow fabricated it. This is a reasonable assumption. If you don't know how the city archives work." He looked at the judge. "I have not come here with a 300-page brief. I have come with one witness and one document." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a single archival-quality, acid-free box. He opened it and, with delicate, practiced hands, removed a single laminated sheet of yellowed paper. "This," he said, "is the original addendum. Filed July 1st, 1953. I found it in the City Archive sub-basement, cross-referenced under file 53AQM7. Aqueduct Maintenance, South Market. It was filed with the water main plans because, as the charter states, the funding for the El Dorado's construction and the new aqueduct came from the same municipal bond. The archive clerks of 1953 bundled all related documents. It wasn't missing, Your Honor. It was simply filed correctly by 1953 standards." He placed the document on the court's projector. The text was clear. "The El Dorado building is hereby granted perpetual historic protection and is exempt from any and all future municipal rezoning." The room was utterly silent. Rivington was pale, staring at the screen. "But that is not my witness," Noah said. "My witness, who I would like to call on the matter of this motion, is Ms. Alana Petrov, the chief city archivist." A small gray-haired woman was sworn in. Noah led her through a simple, devastating series of questions. "Ms. Petrov, how long have you worked for the city archives?" 38 years. "Are you familiar with the Charter Works overflow protocols of the 1950s? "Of course. It's archaic, but simple. Public works and public housing charters were often co-filed if they shared a bond issue. So if you were looking for a 1953 tenant charter for the El Dorado building, where would you look?" "Well, I'd check the 1953 bond issues. That would be, let me see. Yes, the South Market Aqueduct. I'd check the AQ files in the sub-basement. Exactly where this document was found. Yes, that's just proper procedure." Noah turned to Rivington. "Do you have any questions for Ms. Petrov, Mr. Rivington?" Rivington looked at the archivist, at the document, at the judge. He was trapped. To question Petrov was to question the city itself. To accept her testimony was to admit his entire case was dead. "No. No questions, he muttered. Thank you, Your Honor, Noah said, sitting down. Mr. Rivington's motion is based on the premise that this document is a fraud. The city's own chief archivist has just testified that its discovery, location, and content are all consistent with proper procedure. His motion is, therefore, baseless. His argument is the frivolous one. He is wasting the court's time. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't smile. He just stated the fact. Judge Vance stared at Noah Ellison. The pity was long gone. The annoyance was gone. She was looking at him, really looking at him for the first time. The kid from the gala had just calmly, and with surgical precision, dismantled the most powerful lawyer in the city. He hadn't used rhetoric. He'd used facts. He hadn't used volume. He'd used the truth. She looked at Rivington, who was ashen-faced and furious. "Mr. Rivington," she said, her voice ice, "your motion for summary dismissal is denied. Your motion for sanctions is also denied, and I would strongly caution you, sir, against ever filing such a baseless, vindictive motion in my courtroom again. We proceed to trial, next Monday, 10 a.m. She banged the gavel. As the room erupted in whispers, Rivington shot a look at Noah. It was not a look of respect. It was a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. Noah Ellison just calmly packed the archival box, slid his notebook into his briefcase, and walked to the back of the courtroom to speak to his clients. The victory was intoxicating, but brief. Noah knew Rivington's next move wouldn't be in a courtroom. He was right. 2 days later, the pressure campaign began. It was brutal, sophisticated, and targeted. First came the press. The City Herald, a paper whose publisher golfed with Rivington, ran a front-page story. Radical lawyer shakes down job-creating developer. The story painted Noah as a publicity-hungry activist and the Mendez family as ungrateful opportunists holding the city's future hostage. It quoted anonymous city sources who called his miracle document a legal technicality that would keep poor families trapped in a dangerous slum. The public, eager for a simple hero and villain story, largely sided with the developer. Then, it became personal. Rosa Mendez was fired from her job cleaning rooms at a downtown hotel. The reason? Customer complaints. The hotel, Noah quickly discovered, was owned by a subsidiary of Stratus Development. Hector Mendez, a line cook, was visited at his apartment. Not by lawyers, but by 2 men in dark suits who didn't give their names. They didn't threaten him. They advised him. "Mr. Mendez," one of them said, leaning against the hallway wall of the El Dorado. The hallway was narrow, the paint peeling. "You have a beautiful family. This is a tough neighborhood." "We are fine," Hector said, his hand trembling on the doorknob. "Are you?" The man smiled. "We hear your cousin Enrique is living with you. We hear his paperwork isn't all in order. It would be a tragedy if someone at ICE got an anonymous tip. A real tragedy." The man held out a cashier's check. It was for $75,000. "Mr. Rivington is a generous man. He's willing to forget this whole misunderstanding. This is his final offer. $75,000. To you. Tax-free. All you have to do is take the check, walk away, and fire that boy. Who's playing lawyer?" "He is a good lawyer," Hector said, his voice small. "He's a kid in a suit," the man countered, his voice hardening. "He's going to get you all deported. He's going to get you all thrown out with nothing. This check is the only thing standing between your family and the street. Or worse, you have 24 hours. That evening, Noah's small office was filled with the sound of sobbing. "They fired me, Mr. Ellison," Rosa wept, twisting a tissue in her hands. "How do I feed my children? And they threatened us. They know about Enrique." Hector stood by the window, his back to the room. We have to take the money, Mr. Ellison. It's so much money, more than I've ever seen. We can go somewhere else. Start over." "He is a giant," Rosa pleaded, her eyes red. "You are a good boy, Noah, a brave boy. But he is a giant, and we are nothing. He will crush us. Please, let us take the deal." Noah sat at his desk, his hands clasped. This was the moment. This was the pivot point. Rivington had found the crack. He wasn't fighting the law anymore. He was fighting human fear. "He's offering you $75,000, Noah said, his voice quiet, "because he knows your homes are worth millions." "What good are millions if we are deported?" Hector shot back, turning from the window. "What good is a historic building if my family is on the street? You don't understand. You are smart. You are educated. You go home to a safe apartment. This is not a game to us." The words hit Noah like a physical blow. "You don't understand." He stood up and walked over to the corkboard, the one with the 1953 document at its center. "He's threatening you," Noah said, "because he's afraid. He's not afraid of me, he's afraid of this." He tapped the plastic-covered document. "He's afraid of the truth. He lost in court, so he's fighting in the alley, because it's the only place he can win." "So let him win," Rosa cried. "We don't want to fight anymore." Noah looked at them. His face was filled with a profound, weary sadness. "If you take this money," he said softly, "you will have to sign a paper. That paper will say this document is a fraud. It will say I am a fraud. And Mr. Rivington will take that paper, and he will have me disbarred, and the El Dorado will be demolished, and all the other families, Mrs. Petrova in 3B, Mr. Chen in 5A, the 20 other families who are counting on you, they will all be evicted with nothing. He's not just buying your silence, he's buying their ruin." The room went silent, save for Rosa's hitched breathing. "He thinks you are small," Noah continued, his voice gaining a hard, steel edge. "He thinks he can buy you. He thinks he can scare you. He offered you $75,000 to sell out your neighbors, your home, and the truth. Is that who you are?" Hector looked at his wife. He looked at Noah. He saw the kid who had faced down a monster for them. "No," Hector said, his voice hoarse. "It is not." He shook his head, a new resolve hardening his face. "No, we will not take it." Rosa looked at her husband, her eyes wide with fear, and then with pride. She nodded, wiping her tears. "No, we fight." Noah let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Good. Now, here's what we do. Rosa, you're not a hotel cleaner anymore. As of tomorrow, you are a salaried consultant for my firm, advising on the Mendez versus Stratus tenant committee. Hector, you will move your cousin Enrique to a safe house upstate tonight. Ben has a friend. He'll be safe." "But we have no money," Hector said. "You don't need it," Noah said. "My firm is posting bond for your family's safety and security, and I am filing an emergency motion with Judge Vance tomorrow morning. Subject, witness tampering and intimidation." He looked at the two men in dark suits Rivington had sent. "And you?" Noah said, turning to them. They were still standing in the hallway, smug. "You're on private property. You just attempted to bribe and intimidate the lead plaintiff in a federal case. That's a felony, and you did it in full view of my office's security camera." He pointed to a small, dark dome on the ceiling. The two men's faces went white. They looked at each other, and then bolted down the hall. Noah turned back to the Mendezes. "He won't stop, but we won't either. The trial is Monday. We just have to hold on until Monday." Monday morning, the courtroom was a circus. The press was there in force, alerted by Noah's emergency motion. The gallery was packed, split down the middle. On one side, Rivington's phalanx of expensive suits. On the other, the tenants of the El Dorado, dressed in their Sunday best, sitting shoulder to shoulder, a silent, nervous wall of solidarity. Judge Vance's face was thunder. She had read Noah's motion. She had seen the security footage. "Before we begin opening statements," she said, her voice so cold it burned, "I want to address the defense's extracurricular activities. Mr. Rivington, I have before me a motion alleging witness tampering, intimidation, and bribery, complete with video evidence. Do you have any explanation for your firm's conduct?" Rivington stood. He was not cowed. He was enraged. This child had embarrassed him again. "Your Honor, this is a misunderstanding. My client, in an act of profound generosity, made a private offer to Mr. Mendez. Vance Ellison, in his inexperience, has twisted it into something nefarious." "Generosity?" Vance repeated, her voice dripping with disbelief. "Threatening to call ICE is generosity?" "Rogue employees, Your Honor," Rivington said smoothly, throwing his fixers under the bus without a second thought. "They have been terminated. It has nothing to do with me or my firm's strategy. It is a distraction. I move to strike the motion and begin the trial." Vance stared at him, her jaw tight. She wanted to sanction him into oblivion, but he'd given himself just enough cover. "Motion to strike is denied. The motion is taken under advisement. And Mr. Rivington, you should know that you are now proceeding in this courtroom under a microscope. Your rogue employees are being investigated by the U.S. Attorney's Office as we speak. Sit down." The power in the room had shifted. The Rivington associates were no longer grinning. Rivington, however, was a master. He'd taken a hit, but he wasn't out. He launched into his opening statement, a brilliant performance. He was humble. He was passionate. He apologized for the unfortunate incident. And then he pivoted, painting Noah as the villain. "This case is not about a building. It's about an idea. The idea of progress. And Mr. Ellison is against it. He is an ideologue. He would rather see families like the Mendezes live in squalor, just so he can win a point. He is holding this city hostage with a typo." He attacked the 1953 document. "It's a clerical error, a 70-year-old mistake. Are we truly to believe that one misfiled piece of paper should halt a $2 billion project that will create 5,000 jobs? Are we to sacrifice the future of this city for a filing error? That is not justice. That is madness." He was good. He was very good. He managed to sound like the voice of reason. By the time he sat down, the jury, a mix of middle-class citizens, looked convinced. They were homeowners. They understood progress. They didn't understand 70-year-old addendums. Then, Rivington began his case. He didn't just call witnesses. He called a parade of experts. A structural engineer testified the El Dorado was a catastrophic failure waiting to happen. A city planner testified that the 1982 Rezoning Act was the gold standard and had implicitly voided all prior, antiquated charters. A historian, paid handsomely by Rivington's firm, testified that the 1953 addendum was clearly an administrative error and was never intended to be permanent. For 2 days, Rivington built a new fortress, brick by brick. He was burying Noah under the sheer weight of expert opinion. Noah sat at his table, taking notes. He barely cross-examined. "No questions for this witness, Your Honor." "Just one, Your Honor. Professor, you are being paid $4,000 an hour by Stratus Development, correct?" "Thank you." Rivington was swelling with confidence. The kid was drowning. He hadn't landed a single punch. Judge Vance, too, felt a familiar skepticism creep in. Noah had won the motion, yes? But he was losing the trial. He had no counter-experts. He had no answer to Rivington's narrative. The jury was getting bored with the kid, who just sat and scribbled in his notebook. Finally, Rivington rested his case. "The defense rests, Your Honor." He all but bowed to the jury. Vance sighed. "Mr. Ellison, your case in chief." Noah stood. "Thank you, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls one witness. Rivington laughed. One witness? We call, Noah said, his voice clear and carrying to the back of the room. Marcus Rivington thrust to the stand. A nuclear bomb could not have had a more profound effect on the courtroom. The jury sat bolt upright. The press scribbled frantically. Rivington's associates looked at each other in naked panic. You did not call opposing counsel to the stand. It was a high-wire act without a net. It was suicide. Rivington himself froze. His face went from smug to shocked to calculating. He saw the play. The kid was going to try and rattle him about the gala, about the witness tampering. Your Honor! Rivington's co-counsel leaped up. This is outrageous! It's a stunt! Counsel is harassing Mr. Rivington. We object! On what grounds? Judge Vance asked, her eyes electric. She was riveted. It's irrelevant and prejudicial. Mr. Rivington's testimony is central to this case, Your Honor, Noah said calmly. And as he is not a named defendant, he has no grounds to refuse. He is a material witness. To what? To the history of his own law firm. Vance's eyes narrowed. I'll allow it. Overruled. Mr. Rivington, take the stand. Seething, Rivington smoothed his suit and walked to the witness box. He was sworn in. He sat there, staring at Noah, a portrait of condescending power. Try me, boy. Noah approached the lectern. He had his notebook. Mr. Rivington, Noah began, you are the senior partner at Rivington, Sullivan & Croft, correct? I am. And your father, Marcus Rivington II, founded the firm? He did, in 1948. Rivington was proud of this. A prestigious firm. And in the 1950s, your father's firm did a great deal of work for the city, did it not? Rivington's pride was replaced by a flicker of caution. They were one of many firms, yes. One of the lead firms, surely, Noah pressed. Specifically, they were the lead counsel on the 1953 South Market Development Bond, the very bond that funded the El Dorado and the aqueduct. Correct? Rivington's hands, resting on the witness box, gripped the wood. It was a long time ago. I suppose that's possible? Oh, it's more than possible, sir. Noah opened his notebook. I have the engagement letters, right here, signed by your father. His firm drafted the 1953 bond issue. They wrote the charter. Noah let that hang in the air. Rivington was no longer breathing. And then, Noah continued, his voice still quiet. Let's fast forward. 1980. Your firm, with you now as a junior partner, advises a new client, Stratus Development, on its inception. We have a proud, long-standing relationship with Stratus, yes. Of course. And in 1982, your firm, your father's firm, is again lead counsel for the city, advising them on the new city-wide rezoning act, the one you've based your entire defense on. The trap was now visible to everyone. Rivington's face was chalk. Your Honor, he stammered, this is history. It has no bearing. No bearing? Noah's voice rose for the first time, a whip crack of controlled fury. Mr. Rivington, your father's firm wrote the 1953 charter. You knew about Addendum 4.1b. You knew exactly what it was and where it was. And then, 30 years later, your firm advised the city on the 1982 Act, and you failed to disclose the addendum's existence. You didn't overlook it. Your firm buried it. That is a lie, an outrageous, slanderous accusation. Rivington was on his feet in the witness box, jabbing a finger. Noah did not back down. Is it? Your firm created a conflict of interest that has spanned 70 years. You buried an inconvenient truth in 1953 so that decades later your clients, like Stratus Development, could profit from the mistake. This wasn't a clerical error, Mr. Rivington. This was a conspiracy. Noah turned from the sputtering lawyer and faced the jury. He called me a shakedown artist. He called my clients opportunists. But the only opportunist in this room is the man on the stand. His father created a ticking time bomb, and he has spent his entire career waiting for it to explode so he and his clients could get rich. Noah walked back to his table. He looked at Rivington, who had collapsed back into his chair, his mask of civility shattered, revealing the raw, ugly greed beneath. "And when I," Noah said, his voice dropping back to its lethal quiet. "A kid he didn't recognize, showed up at a party. He didn't see a lawyer. He saw a servant. He saw someone he could humiliate, because that is what he does. That is all his firm does. They humiliate the poor, they intimidate the weak, and they lie to the court." He turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I have no more questions for this witness." Marcus Rivington III sat in the box, broken. He was defeated, not by an argument, but by a receipt, by a simple, undeniable truth he thought was buried forever. Judge Vance looked at him. She saw no power. She saw no prestige. She just saw a common criminal in an expensive suit. "Mr. Rivington," she said, her voice shaking with a rage that was generations deep, "you may step down, and I would advise you to retain personal counsel immediately." The jury deliberated for 45 minutes. The verdict was a total, crushing victory for the plaintiffs. The 1953 addendum was declared the controlling legal authority. The El Dorado was protected. Stratus Development's project was dead. And the court, on Judge Vance's order, was opening a formal investigation into Rivington, Sullivan, and Croft for a 70-year conspiracy to defraud the city. Marcus Rivington III, the top lawyer in the city, had been defeated. He sat, stunned and gray, as his associates packed his briefs, refusing to look at him. The other side of the courtroom was a joyful chaos. The tenants of the El Dorado were weeping, embracing, cheering. Rosa and Hector Mendez lifted Noah into the air, chanting his name. He was laughing, a rare, bright sound in the august, wood-paneled room. That evening, the party continued at the South Side Justice Collective. The small office was filled with the smell of tamales and cheap beer. A knock came on the door. The music stopped. Judge Eleanor Vance stood in the doorway. She was not in her robes. She was in a simple trench coat, her hair down. She looked older and more human than Noah had ever seen her. The room cleared, leaving just the two of them. "Mr. Ellison," she said. The title was no longer a formality. It was a mark of profound respect. "Judge." "I came here," she said, struggling with the words, "to apologize. At the gala, the way I looked at you, the way I thought of you. I was wrong. I saw a child. I saw what Rivington wanted me to see. I did not see the lawyer." "It's what I'm used to, Your Honor," Noah said, with no rancor, just fact. "It shouldn't be." She stepped into the room, looking at the chaotic corkboard, the symbol of his victory. "What you did, that cross-examination, it was the finest piece of legal work I have ever witnessed. My father, he was a public defender. He would have been intolerable, so proud." She reached into her coat pocket and placed a small, worn, leather-bound book on his desk. It was a 1940s copy of the Constitution. "That was his," she said. "He told me to give it to the first real lawyer I ever met. I've been on the bench for 20 years, and I'm only just handing it over. Congratulations, counselor." She turned and left before he could respond. Hours later, Noah was alone. The party was over, the tamales gone. The office was quiet. He stood by his window, looking not at a skyline, but at the brick and fire escapes of the neighborhood he had just saved. The setting sun glinted off the glass, and for a moment it caught his reflection. The face of a kid. The face of a killer. He looked at the judge's gift on his desk but didn't open it. He picked up the next file from the leaning tower on his floor. It was a wrongful termination suit. The stack was just as high as yesterday. The work wasn't done. The work was never done. He straightened his tie, bent his head under the lamp, and began to read.